morning, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. You're probably noticing I didn't do an episode about 80 for Brady, because I was going to do that yesterday. I didn't want to see 80 for Brady. I didn't think that historically comedies do great for ratings, and I had just seen Knock at the Cabin on Friday, and that didn't exactly inspire a ton of confidence in me for the rest of the weekend. But I digress. No, I just didn't. I didn't want to see the movie, and it's not like it would have. Anytime I pick to see a movie, there's a mental calculus that goes into it of how many people engage with me talking about this type of movie, and for 80 for Brady, the closest thing to it in recent history would have been The Lost City last year, which I liked. The Lost City. I didn't think it was bad, but because of that, because of The Lost City not doing great, it was just the perfect storm. I didn't want to see 80 for Brady anyway, and then on top of that, I didn't want to. It was not great for numbers. But yeah. So what we have here today, we're going to talk about. Have you ever noticed in a car it is almost impossible to get the right temperature? It's the weirdest thing. No matter what temperature I set it to, it's either too cold or too hot, and there's no equilibrium. Like you can't maintain a good temperature while you're driving. It's the most annoying thing on the planet. And I'm realizing right now I forgot my headphones. Fuck me. It'll be a long day at work. I'm gonna back up on podcasts. I got my spare, but my spares suck. I got Raycons that I carry with me to and from work, and my Raycons are pretty solid. Now, that's not what we're here to talk about, though. We're here to talk about The Last of Us, episode 4 we're up to now? Yeah, episode 4 we're up to now. And this episode, I think, is the closest we get to moving along the plot, in a meaningful way, where it's like, this is entirely a transitional episode to transition from Joel viewing Ellie as ostensibly the MacGuffin of the episode, of the show, where it's like, he needs to get her from point A to point B. It's to get Joel to look at her and see her as a person with feelings, emotions, and all of that. And to see her that way, and to see her kind of like a daughter. As this is just a kid. This is not, just a package. That for a courier mission, this is a kid. Like, she's a kid. And I think that this episode handles it very well. Like, and I think that, like, I've talked about this before with Andor, where it's like, one of the best ways to do something like this is the inter-episode character transition, where we start at one point, and then we get to the end, and it's something different. So, like, in Andor, we had that in the episode, Nobody's Listening, I think was the name of the episode, where Andor is in jail, or in the prison, and he's trying to get Kino Loy to give him the information about how many guards are there in the building. And Kino Loy's like, no, I'm not giving it to you. And as the episode goes on, he keeps asking him, I'm not giving it to you. And he slowly breaks down. And then you get to the end, after the guy dies, and it's the realization that sets in, like, we are going to die in this prison. He goes, it's at that point that he goes, when he says never more than 3, when Andor asks him how many guards are there on each floor, and he says never more than 3. It's that moment of transition where he's like, holy shit, I'm going to die here. And it's to this end, it's not as dramatic in this episode. It's not nearly as for the overarching story, it's important, but for everything else, it's kind of not the most like the way that it happens and the information that's being exposited isn't the most important. But it's things like it's small things, like the episode starting and him siphoning out gas and her teasing him about not knowing how how the siphon actually works, and then pulling out the joke book, and I'm like, oh, the jokes, right. I seem to recall there being griping about the jokes. Not because the jokes were bad, but if I remember correctly, there is an achievement that's missable based on you hearing all of Ellie's jokes, and if you fuck up, you have to replay the entire game from the beginning to get that achievement. So that was kind of a cool thing. Like, that was kind of cool. And then we get to, what's it called? We get to, in the beginning, he's like, just shut up. Like, they're not funny. Just shut up. We're not doing this. And then by the time you get to the end and she has the joke, which is, it's not a great joke. It's the kind of thing you've heard before. You've definitely heard it before. And she goes, did you know that diarrhea is hereditary because it runs in your genes? And he just starts breaking down laughing. It's a moment where it's like they've now connected, and that's the entire point of this episode, is getting these two characters to connect on a more personal level. That way, when we get further in the show, when he's taking these active steps to protect her, it's not just I'm protecting the asset, it's I'm protecting the person who I've come to care about as a daughter. And I think that's working pretty well for what this show is. And it makes everything more interesting. And everything else that goes into this episode is really well done too. And it's like, I think that like there's that very heartbreaking moment when that kid attacks him, and then Ellie shoots him in the spine, so he's paralyzed from the waist down. And it's like first time shooting a gun, and she got that great aim. I'm like, all right, cool, moving on. I think there's a scene that happens in the game that's similar too. I seem to recall hearing people talking about that, like, oh, that scene's gonna come at some point in the show where where she's gonna save Joel's life, and it's gonna be with the gun. So it is one of those things where it's like, all right, cool, but looking at, what's it called? Looking at that whole sequence, the guy begging for his life, was just heartbreaking, and like kind of horrifying. Like the guy who did it is such a great actor, where it's like he knows he's gonna die, so he's just screaming for his mom. It's just so sad. It's the whole episode is just all that, and the thing is too, it's like, I like the introduction to Melanie Linsky, and everything with that little, that little faction of humans. When we get to when we get later in the show, and as this goes on, obviously this is going to be an arc for an episode or two, is what's going to be going on with this, and that's kind of a cool idea. Before we get into, getting further in the show, I like this idea of doing kind of like self-contained kind of episodes where it's like, all right, we have a, like each episode can kind of be watched on its own, and its own little standalone story in the wasteland, and it's a cool idea where it's like, we can get to know the characters on a more intimate basis, and we can get to know everything about them, and every episode kind of feels like its own story, and you don't have to it works as part of a running narrative, but also if someone jumps in and watches one episode, they're not going to be lost. But I think that's really all I got to talk about with this. I don't have too much more to add. So, like, looking at, the schedule going forward, tomorrow, Josie and I recorded a episode of 30-minute reviews. We talk about virtual reality, why we don't have VR headsets yet, whether we would use VR headsets, what do we think about the state of virtual reality gaming, where do we think virtual reality is going to go in the future, all that kind of cool stuff. We talk about that. We also talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever, because that was at Disney Plus last week, and she finally saw it, so that's coming out. That comes out tomorrow, just after midnight. I think it's like 12:05 I set it to. Then Wednesday, we have the new Exploring Hyperspace Lanes episode that we also recorded on Saturday, where we talk about Battlefront and Battlefront 2 and the announcement of Visions getting its second season, which didn't know that Josie didn't like Visions. We'll talk about that a little bit on that episode too. So all of that's coming, in the next 2 days. Tomorrow on Beware of Spoilers, we have a review of SpongeBob The Cosmic Shake, which I have played, and I'm going to give my thoughts on. And you will hear them, and you will, be able to render a judgment on my opinion. And I have a feeling that you'll see tomorrow. And what was the other one that's coming out? Next week we'll be doing Hogwarts Legacy. I pre-ordered my copy, so that'll be like next Friday. The Flash comes back this week, so we'll be doing episode discussions of The Flash for one last run. Pun intended. And we'll be doing a continuation of... The Last of Us is coming out on Friday this week because they don't want to counter-program the Super Bowl. For obvious reasons. So what they figure is, okay, we'll put it out Friday and then we'll go back to Sundays after that. What that means for my schedule, I can't exactly tell you. I will, if there is an update, the best way to do it is if you go on multipleworldproductions.com, which the link is in the description. If you subscribe, you will be able to see. It's not a subscription you got to pay for. I'm not making people pay for my nonsense. As of right now. I don't think we have an audience big enough for you to pay for it. But if you go on there, you can subscribe, and I'll put out an update regarding this week's scheduled shifts, if there are any. And I'll be posting an update, and I'll also put up an article too about it. So that way it is kind of that way it goes out as like you get an email notification and an update if you have the WordPress app installed and you're following. Just because I feel like this is a weird week. Because ordinarily when I make an update, I just put it on the I just put it on the website, on the calendar page, which at the top it's like upcoming events. Yeah, we're going to definitely I'm going to do an update for that because I don't know why they waited until yesterday to announce Friday is going to be episode 5. It seems like a weird decision to do that. Now it'd be like, okay, so the week of the Super Bowl, for obvious reasons, we're going to move the episode release to Friday instead of having it come out on Sunday. Even though it's an obvious decision to make, considering how good I think it was a decision made based on ratings as they are. If the ratings weren't great, they were going to keep it on Sunday and be like, well, fuck it, people will watch it later. But I'm thinking there's a sizable contingent of people who are watching the show live, or in my case, on HBO Max, like an hour after it comes out. And I think that they're anticipating, like, the Super Bowl's going to go, like, what's it called? The Super Bowl's going to go till about 10, give or take, so that makes sense. So they would make that adjustment. But yeah, I think that just about wraps it up for today. So, until our next episode, which will be tomorrow on this very channel, or over on the 30-Minute Reviews channel, you can listen to the discussion of Wakanda Forever, and VR, and Yogurt over there. And you can also listen to Cosmic Shake tomorrow morning over here on 30-Minute on Beware of Spoilers. But I'm just trying to get... I have a weird thing with the number 13. I don't like putting out 13-minute episodes. I'm trying to get over that little hump. So if it seems like I'm, carrying on a little bit, that's why. But until then, have a great rest of your week.